Welcome, everyone.
Hey.
Hello. Welcome back. We are on episode 2 of season 2.
Yay, we're so glad you're here reading books.
We are kind of trucking along here. Hopefully you guys read some good books this week.
Yeah.
Maybe based off our recommendations.
Maybe you read some Rebecca Ross.
I know. I feel like this is just becoming the Rebecca Ross fan club.
I think it is right now. I'm on a Rebecca Ross high, but we're not going to talk about her today, hopefully.
If you want more Rebecca Ross content, go to last week.
Yes.
I will just say, it's getting a little nippy outside.
Yeah.
It's cold,
It's
man.
cold. I know when it's really cold when I
Yeah.
can, like, my face hurts and, like, it feels like pins.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or like I was saying earlier to Kaitlin, I feel like thinking back to like 2020 and 2021, that winter season.
Yeah.
My face was the warmest it's ever been because I just wore a mask. And straight up, I've been thinking about it. I'm like, do I just wear a mask when I'm outside?
That's what I'm
thinking.
thinking.
Your nose is covered. Like,
and people are getting sick.
I know.
So you might as well anyway.
I know. Anyways, I just thought that was kind of funny because like thinking back, I'm like, why didn't we do this all the time?
I don't know because we're weirdos.
This is true.
Well,
but, yeah, I know. It's
fine.
It's fine.
Okay, guys. So today we're going to be talking about our favorite fantasy series.
Yeah.
And obviously we are fantasy girlies.
Mm-hmm.
We like a little romance here and there, but we're pretty set on fantasy.
Yeah.
And Sophia's definitely read more fantasy series than I have, but I love fantasy a lot.
You're getting there.
Yeah. So we're just gonna jump in.
I will say I feel like with fantasy, it took me a while to get to that genre.
Oh.
But once I was in it, I was in it.
Oh yeah.
Like, let's just put it that way. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's why I've read a little bit more than you, but I kind of dove into the deep end. So I have a few more on the list, but you know, you're gonna have a lot, I feel like, in this upcoming year.
I think so.
I'm excited for you. You're gonna really dive into your fantasy journey.
I'm excited. Yeah, I was definitely like a romance thriller.
Yeah.
And I think I like thriller because it just moves so fast and we need to get to those twists and turns. But fantasy actually does bring you into a new world.
Yeah.
So I like that.
Yeah. Especially as a creative.
Oh, yes.
You know?
We're creatives.
Yeah.
So let's start with what are just our off the top of our heads favorite fantasy series. Let's take turns. Sophia can go first.
I don't want to be basic, but I feel like I have to because it's just so good for a reason. And that's just all of Sarah J. Maas's worlds. Like, I think, currently I'm rereading all of her books.
Yes.
And it's just a worlds that I don't want to leave. And I just, like, literally, I'm such a mood reader, first of all.
Same.
So all I want to do is reread her books. And I'm having such a great time. And I'm like, I don't want to leave it. And I think that is, if that shows you what my favorite fantasy world is and favorite series are, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but what my favorite fantasy series are, it's got to be that. Yeah. Like, there's so many, and, there are some amazing ones out there. And I could rant about Rebecca Ross. I could rant about Stephanie Garber. I could rant about Mary E. Pearson, even Neil Shusterman. But I think if I really had to pick one, it's that. And I think specifically probably the Throne of Glass universe.
Woohoo.
But again, they're so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you though?
I'll say one of mine is, my favorite series. The one I also recommend to everybody is the Caraval trilogy.
Yeah.
I think it's perfect for beginner fantasy readers.
Yes.
I think it's perfect for seasoned fantasy readers. I think Stephanie Garber does a great job at building this very easy to swallow world for everybody. It's not confusing. It's pretty straightforward. Here's the plot. Here's where it's going.
Pretty whimsical.
Very whimsical. Yeah. Think masquerade, glitter, stars, people flying. People are not flying, but that's good.
I was like, okay, sure.
I feel like that's the
I was like,
mood.
what book did you read?
Well, so I'd probably say the one I recommend most and the one I do want to reread is Caraval trilogy.
Yeah. It's so good. And I'm excited for you to get into the Once Upon a Broken Heart
that's
spin-off
next.
because it stays in that kind of whimsical fairy tale world. It's a little bit more fairy tale vibes.
Right.
We don't have Caraval anymore. We don't have the actual event of Caraval. Yeah. But we're still in that world and we still have some of the same characters. Yeah. And it's great.
I've seen those TikTok and Pinterest aesthetic.
Yeah.
Like if you like this aesthetic, read this book. Yeah. And I was just like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
like, oh, this is gonna be really
Yeah.
good. So that one
Yeah.
is next on my list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be great. I feel like beyond Sarah J. Maas, if I just had to mention one more, I feel like, ironically, I'm gonna agree with you on Stephanie Garber. Like, I just feel like thinking about that, where like you're talking about how whimsical it is and all these things. Like, I'm like, yeah, it's a good world. It's a good world.
It's fun.
It's a good world.
It's fun.
Good series.
Do you have another series that you go to besides SJM?
You know, I was just trying to think back on my list of books. I was looking through my Goodreads because I was like, I don't want to forget any of them.
Yeah.
Because I've done that in the past. We'll be ranting about books. We've talked about our favorite books, and the episode will end. I'm like, oh, why didn't I talk about that one? Like, why did I just skip over that one? And honestly, I'm gonna have to go with Shadow and Bone and the Six of Crows world, because okay, let's be honest, it's a little grimy. It's a little like, it's not whimsical at all.
I've never read it.
Well, I haven't actually read Shadow and Bone, but I've read the Six of Crows duology.
Okay.
And I've seen the show, so I have kind of a visual. It's kind of nice that it's a show because there's a visual to it. It's an interesting world, I gotta tell you. The whole idea of like the Grisha being like the magical people there, and the different powers they have. They kind of have elemental powers, which is really cool. There's like shadow and air and fire. Like those are like the powers.
Okay.
And then there's like different kind of sections of those powers, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So you have like the people that control the air, but then they can also do like expansions on that. Anyways, it's a cool world, and I feel like I haven't mentioned it at all on the podcast yet, so I wanted to throw that one in there.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Nice. I also have Throne of Glass series so far. Yeah. I didn't know, like, you know what, it's going to be a good series when like book 2 or 3 is like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Yeah. And I need to continue reading. I just got distracted by all these new releases of other books, but I can already, like, if the beginning already feels very like on the edge of your seat, what's gonna happen, I already know that it's gonna be a great series. You're
gonna just dive deeper and love it. And there's some things to come that you're gonna be like, oh yeah, there we go. This is cool. Yeah. You're gonna have a great time with it. I need you to keep reading it. You're taking a pause to read. Well, you're taking a pause for a good reason, reading all of Rebecca Ross's books. But you gotta dive back in.
Yeah, I'm in a very deep Rebecca Ross hole right now.
Yeah.
And I can't get out. So help. I'm just kidding.
That's okay.
Do you have any other series?
I think in terms of like magical world, magical elements, just looking at that, I wanted to also mention a book that I haven't talked about much, which is Babel by R.F. Kuang.
Okay.
The magic system, the magic elements with that, and I'm trying to think of a way to explain it that's like palatable, but basically it is silver and language. So for example, if you wanted electricity, if you wanted a light bulb to turn on, you would take a silver bar, and on one side, in English, for example, you would say illuminate, something like that, right? On the other side of the bar, you would say as close of a translation of that word as possible. So it could be in French, could be in Latin, could be in whatever language, but it needs to be as close of a translation as possible. And if both are matched up, like if both are basically almost the perfect translation, then it will work. So same thing if you want a carriage to run, silver bar, transportation maybe is the word, or whatever. Again, in whatever other language, it has to be as perfect of a translation as possible. Then it works. It's really, it kind of messes with your brain a little bit, but it's really cool.
That's kind of hard for me to grasp.
Yeah, I will say. And the funny thing about this book is the author puts in a lot of like asterisks, and then there's footnotes, which is really interesting, which actually does help you understand.
Oh, that's fun.
But reading it, you're kind of like, okay, is this a textbook though? Like, because you know how you see like asterisks and things, and you have to go down to the footnotes. It definitely took me a little time to get into the book, but in terms of a magic system, come on, that's pretty unique. Like that's pretty cool. Takes a lot of brain power to come up with something like that. Yeah. So that's a cool one. Yeah. For sure.
So that's your favorite magic system?
One of my favorites. I feel like there's a lot of ones, but that one I'm trying to think of books that I haven't mentioned before. Of course, your girl has to talk about the elements of cadence, the idea of the spirits, and like the idea that the wind carries like gossip in a sense. And you know, being a musician, I love the idea that you have to like play music for the spirits. And that's pretty cool. But yeah, I'm trying to mix it up. I'm trying.
I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah, my favorite magic system I was gonna say is A River Enchanted. Yeah, I'm again love Rebecca Ross. Hi. I think the way that she took the gods and the elements together, and how like there was a god of fire, a god of the earth, and all of these things, and how like your offerings are music. Like we found out she played cello.
So I asked her when we met her, when she was signing our books, I asked her if she played any music or if she had any musical background, just because she wrote her descriptions of music were very well done and didn't feel cringy to me at all. And I've read
too well done.
I've read a lot of books, because you and I are both musicians. Yeah, and I feel like I've read a lot of books where I'm like, that's cringy to read. Like it doesn't feel right.
Right.
And she wrote them very well. And so she said that she played cello in high school. Yeah. And that she wishes she had continued it, which I was like, oh, you can always pick it back up.
Yep.
You know,
exactly.
If you want to.
Exactly.
So that was cool.
What's a magical world that you want to live in?
Okay. I think I would die in just about every universe. Let's be honest. I was thinking about it, and I was like, I could not live in Throne of Glass. I could not live in Akatar. Yeah. I could not live in Crescent City. I could not live in the Grishaverse. I could not live in the Ember and the Ashes universe. Like, I would die in every single one. I'd be the first one to go. Like, I gotta be honest. I would probably even die in Divine Rivals. I'd probably be one of those soldiers that just like Dacre's like, yeah, you, and then you know, whatever. So I have to go with River Enchanted, because I feel like it's the most unlikely for me to die. I could just live in the town. Yeah. I could just live my life. You know what I mean? Like, I could just live in, garden, you know, either in the east or the west, live in my life, garden, chill. Yeah. Like, I was like, I feel like literally, I was looking over, I was on my Goodreads, and I was looking at every magic system, and I was like, I literally would die in every single one.
Well, I think the thing with magical worlds is that there's mostly a war that happens somewhere, either that happened in history, maybe there's a war coming. Yeah. And people have to fight, like in
even in Scythe, I would be gleaned 100%. That's a world where you can't die unless you're gleaned by a scythe.
What about Fourth Wing?
Oh, I would fall off the parapet.
Well, you could you could be a scribe.
Yeah, but I just feel like
you could just write and be in a library.
True. But what if I get chosen to go into the like?
Well, I don't know. You're gonna have to run away, Sophia.
Yeah, no, literally. I've been like genuinely, I'm pulling up my Goodreads again just to make sure I didn't miss anything. Like Red Rising, I would die.
Well, I'll say. Die.
Literally, I'm like, nope.
I think mine would be, I think I would want to be in Harry Potter. I would want to be at Hogwarts. Yeah. Because, I mean, now, would this be post-Voldemort? Probably, because it's a little more like we're studying to be, you know, potion, what do you call them? Potion people.
Or you could do whatever you wanted.
Yeah, it's a little more.
Would you want
to be
a little
more structured?
Would you want to be an Or?
Or no, an Or is a potion person?
No, Or is like the wizard police. They go and get the bad guys.
No,
I was gonna say.
No. That's what all I want to do is make potions.
I feel like that's what Harry becomes. He becomes an R or an Or. Yeah, you could be like Neville. Neville goes into like herbology.
I want to do potions,
I don't
Sophia.
know what that's called.
I don't know either.
A healer? I don't know. Like, you have to ask Snape, because he's like the potions person.
Well, you know, bummer. Snape is dead.
You're on your own a little bit.
So I'll say I would want to live in post-Voldemort time at Hogwarts.
Yes. Gotcha.
You're a Hufflepuff, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm a Ravenclaw. So cool. I'll also be in the library if you guys want to look for me.
There you go.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, well, see, if I lived during the Harry Potter time, I would also die. And I feel like...
This is true.
Also, Kaitlin is very obsessed with cozy fantasy.
Yeah.
Also, and I feel like A River Enchanted, it's very folklory.
Yeah.
It's just warm. The town is like low stakes.
Yeah.
Though there are high stakes in the book.
If you were just a townsperson, chilling.
It's fine.
I could even be a servant that works at like the Laird's castle. I don't care. Like, just let me chill.
The lady
you know.
who like takes care of
Yeah.
Citra.
Yeah, and she's like Maisie's coming too.
I know.
Like,
yeah, Sophia's
you know,
gonna. She'd be that lady.
I'm fine with doing that. You can,
Okay.
you can put me in that
This
role.
is a good question. What's your favorite journey of a character?
When you told me you were going to ask this question, I audibly like had just a sigh, because I would go on and on and on and on if I could about Selena from Throne of Glass.
Yeah.
I love her. She has my whole heart. I think that her journey is, I mean, and let me preface, like, we get 8 books of her journey. A lot of other characters come in. There becomes a lot of like points of views. We have a lot of other characters that have an amazing journey. But really from start to finish, we have Selena. And like, if this is any sign to read Throne of Glass, like, you have to. Of course, there's the different reading orders. People debate, like, you know, you might get a better story of her journey if you start with Assassin's Blade. You might get better, like, if you have Throne of Glass first. Like, but what I think, whatever way you read the series, like, you will fall in love with her character.
Yeah.
And she goes through some stuff. Let me tell you, she really, really does. And I'm not going to give any spoilers.
Well, let me
like,
ask, how many years from, like, does it stem from beginning to end?
I'm trying to think. Not that many. Because it's like, once the ball gets rolling, it's rolling.
Yeah.
And I know that some of the books, like, you kind of thought Heir of Fire was going to be a little slow at first.
Yeah.
If I'm thinking back. When the ball rolls, the ball is rolling. Like, seriously. So I don't think it's that long in between. And again, I'm doing a reread, so I'll be able to like figure that out.
Yeah.
But based off of memory of reading it back in April and May, I don't think there's a huge amount of time.
Well, I'm only asking because something like a series like Harry Potter, he goes from like what, 12 or 11 to 18 or 19.
It's not that many years for sure.
Oh,
if anything, it's like maybe 2 years. Yeah,
all 8 books happen in 2 years,
something like that.
Wow.
I'm not trying.
Well, that's also a very intentional growth of a character in a short amount of time.
Yes. Yeah.
Versus Harry is like, you're going to school with him and you're seeing him grow as and even the readers at the time were the age of Harry, so like they were also growing with him, which I feel like was really cool. My favorite character growth. What's the sister's name in Caraval?
Donatella.
Yes, Tella.
Yeah.
I was about to call her Stella for some reason, but anyway.
Stella. You've been mixing
Tella.
Scarlet and Tella. My favorite is Stella.
I love the sisters. Yeah, Tella's journey.
Sorry, that's such a weird nickname. If I was Donatella, don't call me Tella. It's like, let me tell you.
What would you call her?
Let me tell you. Like, you know what I mean? But I also wouldn't want to be called Dawn. Don't call me Dawn. Don't call me Tella. You just would have to like come up with something else, or just call me Donatella. I get weird about nicknames like that.
Okay,
like,
that's fine.
Like, Tella. Hey, Tella. You know what I'm saying? Like, sorry. Anyways.
Okay, guys, don't give Sophia a nickname unless it's Soph.
Yeah, I just go by Soph.
Anywho, Tella. So if you have not read the Caraval trilogy, it starts with the sister of Tella, Scarlet. And then around book 2, it totally changes to more of Tella's journey.
Right.
And it kind of ends with her.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we kind of see glimpses of her in season 1. And
Season 1?
Season 1. Which
one.
It should be either a show or a movie. I would love
it. Would be, I think it would need to be a show.
Yeah.
You know, like, I feel like we need a show, because otherwise you have to try to fit 3 kind of different stories.
Like a limited series.
Yeah.
Like 7 or 8. Anyway, sorry. Back to or sing. I think, you know, you kind of see Tella as this, like, you know, maybe you kind of see glimpses of her and she's kind of whatever about everything.
Right.
And then you find out like she's a very key part of the story, and so I think that's a short amount of time too of the character's journey, and her arc really only happened book 2, book 3. So she's like really not in book 1. Like, she's the whole plot point why she's not, like, if we're being honest. So we really only get to know her over the span of 2 books. So, I like her. I think she's pretty bad.
She's pretty cool. I wanted to throw out one more character journey, just because I haven't really talked about these books too much. And this is, if you like enemies to lovers, In Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves
I was
are
gonna
two main
ask about
characters.
this.
Yeah, Jace and I in my head I say Kazi, could be Kazi. I don't know. It's spelled Kazi. So
Okay.
I say Kazi. They start off as enemies.
Uh-oh.
And the way that, okay, this is not really a spoiler, but this is so funny to me. Hello, New York. I don't know if you can hear the honks. There we go.
Beep, beep.
Beep, beep. They end up being like literally ankles shackled together, and they have to escape like from their situation.
Absolutely not.
And so they have to
Absolutely
spend
not.
days together.
Oh, like forced proximity.
Forced proximity, and enemies to lovers. And like, okay, sorry. I just like, it's so good, honestly. And it's just 2 books. It's just a duology.
Okay.
And the ending of the second book, y'all already know.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe you know. I don't know if you know, but I was sobbing.
I think I need to go look for it.
Yeah. Yes. It's a good one to get.
I really want to get it.
It's really, really good. And I just like, I'd never talk about these books, I feel like. And like thinking back, I'm like, if I was to reread, listen, what if, let's say in 2024, I wasn't allowed to read any new books. It was just rereads, and I had to pick what I would. That would be a series that I would reread.
Oh.
Who knows when I'll get to
Nice.
it? Because again, there's a lot of books I want to actively like read for the first time, but it's a good one.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Nice.
So yeah, if you're looking for a character arc that's really, really solid, really well written, but it starts off as enemies to love. It starts off as enemies, goes to lovers. Would recommend.
Cool.
Would highly recommend.
Nice.
Yeah.
I want to know who your favorite fantasy author is right now. Excluding our queen, Rebecca. We already love you, but excluding her,
I mean,
who is your favorite
are you gonna
right
exclude one more for me? Do you think?
what do you mean?
Who do you think I'm gonna say?
Oh.
If it's not Rebecca.
Yeah, let's exclude Sarah J. Maas and Rebecca.
I know, because I was like, again, I was looking through my Goodreads from last year, and I was like, who am I gonna say? I'm gonna throw a random one out there. Another series that I haven't really talked about. I've talked to you a little bit about this. I don't know if I've ever thrown it out on the podcast. I'm going to go with Saba Tahir. She wrote the Ember in the Ashes series.
Yeah.
Which I have not finished, by the way. I've read the first 3 and haven't gotten to the 4th book. I want to get to it. It's definitely a goal of mine to finish out that series this year. That first book, 5 stars. Easy 5 stars. It was one of those books.
Wow.
Didn't hit the 6-star shelf, but I finished it, closed that book, and I was like, yeah. 5 stars.
Wow.
It's such an interesting world. It's written kind of in like I imagine it as like desert plains and like kind of the, you know, like I don't know. Like it's definitely not whimsical. It's not a whimsical world. It's definitely like down and dirty type world. There's a lot of drama. There's a lot of but the other thing what I like about it is in the first book I wasn't even really sure if it was fantasy. Because I was like, there's elements.
Oh, that's
there's
interesting.
elements, but it's very low fantasy. And it picks up a lot right at the end of book 1. And then she definitely expands on that aspect in books 2 and 3. I assume she'll expand on it even more in book 4. But yeah, that first book, just as an author and kind of with it is fantasy, but it's like, it's not at all like the fantasy that I read otherwise.
Yeah.
They're all humans. Like there's no fae, there's no like ooh magic. Like it's just kind of, it's a cool world.
Okay.
And I've never really talked about it, but that first book, yeah, totally 5 stars.
Nice.
And yeah, it's a unique one if I have to choose somebody that's not, you know, my queens. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do a author.
Do it.
J.K. Rowling, and I know that there's a lot of controversy around her.
Yeah.
But I'm mostly talking about her world building.
Yeah.
I think it is really unlike a lot of people, and especially like I will be 29 in March.
25 in April for me.
Woo!
Wow.
And I'm about to start Order of the Phoenix. So
Yeah.
I've never read through it,
Yeah.
but I think her writing style is one of the most unique. I mean, if we're talking previous to 2000.
Yeah.
Like she's still contemporary and like very clearly relevant today.
Yeah.
But I do think that she will be one of my top. Of course, like we have like classics like
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis and
Right.
and Tolkien and yeah, they're incredible.
Yeah.
But for me, I think the fantasy now is partially because of her writing.
Yeah, I would definitely say that a lot of series where it's like hero's journey with like,
Chosen one.
some people have magic, some people don't.
Yes.
Like, it's inspired. Like, you can't deny
For
that
sure.
she's a blueprint for a lot of
course,
a lot of books, a lot of series. Yeah, it's definitely, again, like we kind of touched on J.K. Rowling in our episode about classic books or books becoming classics. Whatever your thoughts are on her as an author, as a person, let's put it that way. As a person, you have to admit that her writing and her world building is like pretty phenomenal. And again, a blueprint for so many things. I would agree. Harry Potter is definitely, it's a great one for a reason.
Yeah.
There's a reason why there's, theme parks for it, all the movies, an expansion of the universe with Fantastic Beasts.
Right.
Like, it just keeps going and going.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a great world. I wanted to ask though, if there was an author that maybe you read one book of or haven't finished a series of, I'm just kind of throwing this at you, what would like your favorite be of like a book or series that maybe you haven't even finished? It's like, so that's not SJM, that's not going to be Throne of Glass. Like, is there any fantasy that you've read recently that you're like not even done with yet, but you're like, oh, I'm feeling this, like this is a good author or a good series, anything like that?
Oh man, I mean, Once Upon a Broken Heart.
Yeah.
I think I read the first 2 chapters, but then I was like, oh
yeah,
I want to read River Enchanted.
Yeah.
Rebecca, you just have this way of distracting me from all the other books, but anywho, but I think Once Upon a Broken Heart is gonna be a pretty good one. Also because Stephanie Garber came out with the last book of the trilogy, so now I can binge all of it.
Right. That's always nice.
I just get so frustrated when I'm like, wait, what do you mean the book is not out yet? Like, so you probably feel that way about Crescent City.
Oh well, that's like the whole. Like, I'm on the edge of my seat because now that and that's why I'm doing this reread, because I'm like resetting my brain, putting it back into those worlds, and I'm so excited. I think I might have mentioned at the previous episode, so we're getting closer, which is that I'm going to a midnight release. I'm so excited. And like it'll definitely be interesting because I feel like everybody that will be there has read all of her books.
Oh yeah, you're gonna make a lot of friends.
So it'll be like everybody that's there knows, which I've not really had that before. Like, even when we went to the Ruthless Vows event with Rebecca, half of the people had read the book.
Yes.
So you couldn't really dive into spoilers.
Yeah.
So it kind of kept you kind of back a ways, so I'm excited for that, to have kind of the like community of everybody being like, oh, you know.
Yes.
And I will say though, because the reason I asked that question is because I was looking back on my Goodreads and I realized I read a book, just a standalone, that I was like, oh, that was really good. And that was Heartless by Marissa Myers. And she's an author who, I think one of her popular series right now is the Renegades series. I gotta look up this cover. She wrote a series called Cinder back in the day. Like, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So she was one of those authors. Yeah. She was one of those authors that wrote every single one of her books, to my knowledge, is like a fairy tale retelling.
Yes.
And except for this Renegade series, I don't really know.
I have seen this cover.
Yeah. So Heartless is just a standalone prequel about the Queen of Hearts.
Oh.
Like the Red Queen.
Yes.
And because
wow.
And again, like, not really a spoiler, but if you think about Alice in Wonderland, Queen of Hearts is the villain.
Right.
How did she become the villain?
Oh, I love origin stories.
It's so good.
I do.
It's so
Maybe
good.
I'll put that on my TBR.
And it was one of those books where I'm like, I forgot I read it. I looked back and I was like, oh, that was a good book.
Yeah.
I don't know if that many people have read it, to be honest.
So it has a 4.1
yeah.
on Goodreads, 4.5 on Barnes & Noble, and 4.6 on Target. So that's like...
I will also say...
Pretty good.
Since you like Jax, right?
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a character in Heartless. Gives Jax.
Ooh.
Yeah. I think his name is Jest or something like that. He's the jester at court.
Nice.
I think she calls him Jest or it's something along those lines.
Okay.
But he gives Jax like...
Ooh, Jax energy.
Jax energy. So that's just a standalone, so that's an easy one to like add to the list. But I'll say I've never read any of her other books.
Got it.
Just the one. And I know that Marissa Myers has this huge backlist. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of like, do I want to get into that this year?
Right.
I don't know.
Well, oh my gosh, I had a question.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Rack your brain a little bit. Yes,
have
ma'am.
it.
Okay.
For those listening and they're like, man, I don't know if I want to get into fantasy because I
Yeah.
don't want to do high fantasy and
Yeah.
I'm like not really into that.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give a beginner
Okay.
friendly entrance into fantasy?
Okay. Well, Heartless is a good one. I'm going to be honest. Now that it's on the front of my mind, it's easy because so many people know the story of Alice in Wonderland. Even if you've not seen the movie, you know Alice in Wonderland. Like, it's just kind of common knowledge.
Yeah.
And it's an easy standalone. It's YA. And again, that's just on the forefront of my mind right now. It's an easy read. It's a cool fantasy world. There's, like, not really a spoiler, but, like, she wants to be a baker. She wants to have a bakery. It's like very
cozy.
sweet.
That's
it's very
cozy.
Cozy. So that's an easy one. Caraval, as we know.
Yes.
And we've had friends that read it recently that
Yeah.
were like, oh, this is it
Yeah.
made sense to them.
Yeah.
It was an easy one to get into. And of course, the funny thing about me is I dove headfirst basically into Throne of Glass. And
she did.
It's really good. Obviously, I don't shut up about it for a reason. But it is a lot to jump into. So if you're really looking for like a beginner fantasy, Caraval's a great place to start. Ironically, this is not one of my favorite books, but it is an easy fantasy to get into, and that is The Cruel Prince. It is not one of my favorites.
Yeah.
But also, I'm in the minority of not really liking it. So just keep that in mind, is that most people absolutely adore that trilogy. And I think it is pretty easy fantasy to get into.
I'll give one. I think it was not mentioned right now, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
Because it was one of the top books of 2023 sold. But if you're into Hunger Games, you'll probably like Fourth Wing.
Yeah.
Now, Sophia and I have read a good amount of books, a good amount of different worlds. Yeah. So that was not at the top of our list, but it was good. Now, Iron Flame, the sequel's out. Do what you want with that. I've not even touched it. I got it when it came out and I was like,
I read it and I was just kind of like,
Yeah. Okay. So I would probably, if you're into Hunger Games, if you kind of want to just get into like an academy of school and dragons and all of that, it's pretty easy to digest.
I will say, funny story with Fourth Wing being like an intro for a lot of people. I was in a Starbucks, saw, a girly reading. She was reading Fourth Wing, kind of holding her book up close kind of to her face. So it was kind of like the world to see what she was reading, which I love that. And I approached her. I was like, hey, Fourth Wing. And she was like, yeah, it's my first ever fantasy. And I was like, oh, girl, because she was like, I usually read thrillers. And I was like, oh, have fun. So it was, again, I mean, obviously it was hyped up on Book Talk for a reason, one of the biggest books of 2023.
Yeah.
But it was cool to see somebody being like, oh, this is my first ever fantasy. And I didn't say anything negative about the book at all. I just wanted her to like enjoy it. I did say though, hey, you should check out some of Sarah J. Maas. That's all I said.
Yeah.
I was like, if you like Fourth Wing, dive into that world.
Yeah.
I didn't even give her which book to start. I was like, just kind of, it was a very quick conversation. We were both waiting for our coffee. But it was interesting to see somebody just out in the wild, in a sense, reading that as their first ever fantasy.
I think beginner fantasy readers need something easy and pretty straightforward to digest.
Yeah.
And so I think Heartless, you said.
Yeah.
What was the other book?
Caraval
and Fourth Wing. I feel like. So
I definitely think you should dive into, let's go with Game of Thrones,
I promise I'm not ever going to touch Game of Thrones.
Me neither.
Okay, also another thing, if you're moving from romance into fantasy, I have to give you Divine Rivals. I have to. I think that's another easy transition from something maybe book girlies
also because
are
it's
interested
familiar
in.
To our world. Like we kind of talked about how the world is very similar to our own. So you're going to recognize a lot of things that you're like, oh, like I think even Rebecca talked about how people have described it as historical fiction.
Yes.
And she was like, I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
But I can see how people would think it is.
Yes.
So again, I agree. Very, very interesting and easy to like digest getting into that world.
Yay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So we hope that if you've been itching and like curious about fantasy reads that you'll jump in and maybe just try it out. I think you'll like it.
Yeah, I would love to hear. We would both love to hear, obviously, if you've kind of entered that world. I've had a couple friends reach out and be like, I read this book because of the podcast. I read this book and it makes me so happy.
Yes,
and
please tell us if you picked up a book. We would love to talk about it with you.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week.
All right. Have a good one, guys.
Bye.
Bye.